How do you find the right people? Isn't that a question that we all have? How do you find good employees that stick with you through thick and thin? Hello everyone, this is Glen Guyton, cultural futurist, keynote speaker, helping you to unlock the power of your people. Well, thank you for joining me today. And today I just want to talk about people. I want to talk about the people that you work with, the people that you supervise. What are the qualities that you look for in an employee or in a coworker? I think those are very important questions that we have to ask ourselves in the workplace. You know, no matter what you do, no matter what business you are in the people business. Maybe unless you're doing AI or some artificial intelligence. We all need people, right? We need people. We need team members that we can trust. And sometimes that's a hard thing to come by. I've worked in a number of different organizations, institutions, and it's always challenging, right, to find the perfect team. So what do you do? How do you find the perfect team? Well, I think one of the things that we can do is manage expectations. I think that's at the very beginning of whatever process you're having. If you're going to hire a new staff person, if you want to elevate your team performance, first and foremost, you have to manage expectations. What do you expect to receive, and what do they expect to receive? You know, it's a two-way relationship between supervisor or organization and employee. So what are the expectations? We have to manage expectations. I was dealing with an incident recently where I had certain expectations and the person performing the work had different expectations. Now, you may say, well, since you're the boss or I'm the boss, my expectations trump the expectation of the other person. And that's not necessarily true, because you know what happens? Nothing happens. No one's happy. The employee is not happy and I'm not happy. So we have to manage the expectations of both parties. And sometimes we as leaders have stuff in our heads. I know I always have something going on up here. I always have something in my mind that doesn't always get to the minds of my team. They don't know what's in here. They don't know what I'm thinking. They don't know the 5,000 thoughts that go through my head on a daily basis. So it is my responsibility to clearly articulate my expectations. Now, you can do that in a number of ways. Many of us like to have meetings. With the change in workforce demographics and us working remotely. You know, some people are in the office, some people aren't in the office. You know, it's a little bit more difficult for us to have sometimes the water cooler conversation, the face-to-face conversations. You know, we do it through this medium, through Teams, Zoom, all those other venues, digital venues. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to really convey information in a detailed way. I do think we lose something when we don't have face-to-face communication. But I do think meetings are important. But one of the things that we can do is have a just well written out job description with expectations. So people understand the limits of their authority and the breadth of their authority. Make sure those things are included in your job description. Now, you can't put everything in a job description. So you have to build in some flexibility where you tell people, hey, you can make decisions up to this point. Imagine you're hiring a person that's supervising your building, for example, and they need to make decisions. Now, you can't write down every decision that they're going to make, but you can say, hey, you can make decisions related to this building or to this project. Just don't exceed X amount of dollars. So the person has some autonomy in the work that they're doing. and you don't have to micromanage them, but they're not going to go out and spend $25,000 and you're like, what happened? No, you put a limit on there. So what are you comfortable in allowing them to have discretion? Those are some of the things that we think about. So we have a job description. We clearly outline their responsibilities, but we also give them some flexibility and put enough limitations in place so that we can allow them to have freedom and flexibility, but we're also comfortable with knowing that if something big or major happens, they're going to come and talk to us. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do as a leader is really just mirror the behavior that you expect. And so what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes we say one thing or write something on paper, but our behavior sends a different message. So we need to be mindful of that. If we say to our employees, hey, I want you to spend time with your family. I want you to take off. I don't want you working long hours, but then we're texting them, we're picking up the phone and calling them. We're interrupting their family time. We're calling them after hours. We're giving them projects with not enough time built into the project for them to be able to accomplish the goals that we have in mind. We're sending a different message. So we're setting the expectation by what we've written down or what we've told them, but our actions are setting different expectations. So we have to be mindful of that. You can write everything down and you can have all of the specs and metrics that you want to have, but we can undermine those things by our behavior. I've seen a lot of leaders do that. They say one thing, but they do something else. I've worked with people who said, hey, Glenn, we value open and honest communication in the workplace. And then when you're open and honest with them, they're like, how dare you say that to me? How dare you speak to me that way? I'm your supervisor. I'm your boss. And you're like, hey, boss, I thought we were supposed to have candor in the workplace. I thought we had open and honest communication. You really don't want that. Even though you've said that, your actions are telling me something else. So again, you are setting expectations. So it's important for us to really look at ourselves, our behavior as leaders, and what culture are we creating? What culture are we creating in the workplace? I think leaders are very influential in the workplace culture, because what happens is that we reinforce some behaviors, and then we also set up an environment where if someone behaves a certain way, we punish that behavior. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, depending on what the behavior is. So we need to think about our actions, not just the policies that we have, but please be familiar with your policies. I hate when organizations have policies and value statements and they don't live by those things. So your written policies are important. Your written expectations, job descriptions, all of those things are important and are there to give you some continuity, especially if there are changes in leadership, changes in people that may be supervising you. Workers need some sense of stability. So the written documents do give stability, but culture sometimes trumps all of that. Really, how we act and behave, the unwritten rules of the workplace can often supersede the written rules of the workplace, and that should not happen. Change your written rules if you aren't going to live by them. You need to write your rules and policies in such a way that's, I think, allows for some freedom and flexibility, again, that has some constraints, but also allows for your team members to utilize those big, beautiful brains that they have. If you have to do everything and if you have to micromanage people in the workplace, either you need to change as a leader or you need to get some better people in those roles. That's why you have a team. It's important to have a team. Part of setting the expectations is building trust. Trust is so important in any organization, any institution. We have to build trust so that people know the things that we say are going to be consistent with our actions, that our behaviors are going to be consistent on a regular basis when people come to the workplace, and that we have a certain level of expertise with the things that we do, that we actually are competent leaders, right? That's a big thing, is competency. Again, I think that's one of the factors that we can consider when we're trying to set expectations is, are we competent? Do we know how to do our jobs? Are we hiring competent people? Very, very important. Is competence, I'm thinking here, is competence undervalued in the workplace? I think some people would say it is. I think some people that have worked in a number of areas would say that we aren't hiring the right skilled people. And I think that it's important that we find ways to demonstrate that people are skilled in the workplace. Now, we're in a time when people are pushing back on some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And I think that some organizations did diversity, equity, and inclusion poorly. They did it in a way that perpetuated the myth that people from certain backgrounds weren't qualified. I think that part of our role as leaders is to clearly articulate why we hire certain people. What skills do they bring? What is their value to the team? How do we make the decision that these are the skills that will help us to further our mission? Those things are important because you don't want people to feel tokenized in the workplace. You don't want to be accused of hiring people that aren't skilled and who aren't excellent at their jobs, or keeping people who are not qualified. So part of what you have to do as a leader is to clearly articulate, these are the values that this person brings to the table, right? We all have different skills. We don't need 500 accountants in a company. Unless you are an accounting firm, you may need 500 accountants, but most people just need a couple of accountants. You might need an engineer. You may need a janitor. You may need an administrative assistant. And we know most of the time, based on job title, what skills the people bring. But within a team, we have to really be clear about those things. And that's another way that we can manage expectation. Hey, this is what we're looking for. These are the skills required by this job. And this person that we hired checks all of the boxes and then some. This is why we hired Sally. This is why we hired Joe. These are the skills that they're going to bring to the team. If y'all have any questions about that, come ask me. Those are conversations that we need to have when we bring people in. Often when we have orientation for a new employee, we show them kind of, what day they're going to get their paycheck. We give them all these forms to fill out. But how do we introduce them to the rest of the team? We do a poor job of onboarding people. I think that we should add this to the onboarding process, is letting the other team members know why this person is an asset, why they were hired. And you probably should tell that person that you hired too, hey, this is why we chose you. These are the gifts that we appreciate that you're going to bring to the organization. We're going to share that information also with the rest of the team so that they know why we chose you. You aren't a token. You aren't a so-called DEI hire, whatever that means. I don't like that term because I think it is important for us to have diverse skill sets, that we treat people equitably in the workplace, and that we are really inclusive of the various skills that we need, that we give people opportunities to shine. So think about these things as you're working with your team. Remember that we are in the people business, and I want to help you unlock the power of your people. So celebrate the diverse gifts that you have in your organization, and make sure that they know and support one another as you go about your daily mission. Thank you so much. My name is Glen Guyton. You all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.